What's good, my dudes, and welcome back to the driveway for a car review presented today by Acura, where this week the company has served us up some precision crafted performance family style. So this week we're going to take a look at and drive the 2019 Acura RDX A-Spec.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future.
All right, boys and girls, so let's get to it. And you guys know what comes first, right? It is time to bring this baby to life. Now, first and foremost, just very quickly, I wanted to go over what makes this A-Spec trim level so special compared to some of its other stablemates. And the answer is very simple. The A-Spec trim is like what the F-Sport trim level is to some of Lexus's vehicles, taking what is normally a still very luxurious midsize crossover and giving it just a little bit more of a sporty edge. However, with that being said, being that this is still a luxury vehicle, this sort of stuff still doesn't come cheap. The price tag for my white diamond pearl RDX A-Spec tester with all the options, just over $46,000. Now, when getting into the vehicle, Acura does provide their advanced keyless access as standard, so all you have to do is have the key on you, you walk up to the vehicle, grab the handle, and it unlocks for you. But being the fact that the system is keyless, all you have to do is have this beautiful Acura key fob anywhere within the vehicle. It has all the functions you'd expect: lock, unlock. You've got a button for the power tailgate. You also have the panic function, as well as the releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom of the fob. But anyways, just have it anywhere within the vehicle, such as I have it here in the cup holder. Put your foot on the brake pedal, hit this illuminated start button down here on the dashboard, and now, in recent years, I will say I have become quite the fan of how Acura has been styling a lot of their vehicles, and it really doesn't matter which one of their models you go with, whether it's this RDX, the bigger MDX, the RLX luxury sedan, or even the midsize TLX. The design concept is still very much the same thing, providing all the premium luxury features you would expect from the Acura brand, but again, giving some of their vehicles just that little bit more of a sporty edge, and this RDX A-Spec is certainly no different. Now, in terms of features, you do get quite a lot of stuff as standard equipment, and you start with the full Jewel Eye LED headlights. These are comprised of 7 individual LED modules here. They are auto leveling and adjusting, and you also have the auto high beam assist as standard. So you have 3 LEDs that comprise the high beams and 4 individual LEDs that comprise the main beams. You have LED daytime running lights going along the bottom. Again, those are also automatic, and again, the LED turn signal running across the top. Now, this A-Spec model does offer this exterior body cladding that is very unique in its own way, with the nice black pieces running along the edge here. You do have the LED fog lights, I believe, down here at the bottom, as well as an air skirt that goes through the front corners of the front fascia and exits out through a rather large opening right here behind the wheel well. As you continue on towards the center, you do have Acura's standard diamond pentagon grille, finished here in a beautiful gloss black, and I'm loving the way the inner workings of this grille look, how they sort of draw towards the big Acura badge here in the middle. Now, because the Acura badge is shrouded in here, that does mean we have the sensors here in front for standard features such as the adaptive cruise control, the forward collision warning, the road mitigation braking. So if it senses a vehicle in front of you, it will automatically hit the brakes. But we also have things such as the lane keep assist, as well as a front half of a front and rear parking assist system that also comes as standard. Now, of course, you can't have all this power and performance without something to put that proper power down. And here on this A-Spec trim, we have just that. We have 20-inch shark gray painted split 5-spoke aluminum alloy wheels. Now these are standard only on the A-Spec trim, and they are wrapped in 255/45 series Goodyear tires. Now underneath, we do have a fairly modern setup. We have a McPherson strut suspension in the front, a multi-link suspension setup in the rear. We have about 12.5-inch ventilated disc brakes in the front and about 12-inch solid disc brakes in the rear. And my particular test car has been fitted with Acura's super handling all-wheel drive. So this car performs even just a little bit better, even though you can still get this one with front-wheel drive as a standard option. Now, even though the RDX is not the biggest crossover that Acura currently makes, the numbers on paper seem to tell a little bit of a different story. At about the same size as its competition, running 186.7 inches from nose to tail, the RDX still provides plenty enough space to accommodate at least 5 passengers comfortably. Also, one side note, from the rocker panels down, you're looking at about 8.2 inches of ground clearance. So this is still a true to form crossover, despite having a little bit more of a car-like driving feel. Now again, as you walk down the side of the RDX, again, the design seems to take on a much more artistic approach, because you have curves and swoops like this one here that follows sort of the belt line all the way up to about the middle of the front door. Then you have another one that starts at the front wheel arch and continues all the way up to the edge of the rear taillight, followed by a nice little crease that creates a nice little cavity here towards the center of the rear doors. Now, in terms of the features here on the side, they are pretty much what you would expect from a luxury crossover. You do have the signature A-Spec badge here on the side. I love that. You also get one on the tailgate as well. You have body-colored side view mirrors with LED turn signals thrown in. Now, this car does have the blind spot indication system with rear cross traffic alert, but the indicators aren't where you would expect. They're not hidden up here in the corner of the mirror like some of its competition. There are little light-up icons just inside of this little triangular piece on the inside that are much easier to see from the interior, thus making it a little easier to use the system. Now, also on my tester, as an additional option, we do have a full panoramic sunroof as well, and this thing is huge. It looks kind of small on the outside, being the fact it stops about 3/4 of the way back, but on the inside, the shade goes so far back, the whole roof might as well be opened up. So I'm really digging the panoramic sunroof that Acura has given us here on this test car. Now, when you look at this RDX from the back, I won't say that the design is as aggressive or maybe as extreme as it is in the front, but it still does have a visual taste all its own. And the main, at least eye catcher for me, are these LED dragon tail taillights. Acura calls them dragon tails, and they actually do kind of look like such. They have the sort of arrow shape here that feeds off to this little point up top with a nice little curve here in the middle. Now, like I said, they are full LED. The only thing incandescent on these are the turn signals, but you have LED reversing lights, the LED regular lights that stay on, and then of course LED brake lights as well. We have a standard power tailgate back here. It doesn't have hands-free access or anything like where you wave your foot underneath it, so you can either pull the trigger right here to open the tailgate, or you can just use the fob itself. You do have a standard backup camera, government mandated of course, so it has to be there. Again, the other little A-Spec badge here on the trunk to let passersby know you're not driving an ordinary RDX. And then again, as we get down here towards the bottom, we do have the rear half of that parking assist system that I was telling you about before, but signature just to this A-Spec, we have these huge dual exhaust outlets. Now, to be fair, while this engine does make a pretty good sound, this car seems to be a little bit on the quiet side. If I was to have this car, I probably would open the exhaust up just a little bit. Even though it's a crossover, it still has that sporty heart to it, and I really think Acura should have opened that up just a little bit by giving it a little bit of a bigger exhaust tip a little bit further inside. Now, of course, when you're talking about a family crossover of any kind, of course, families have a lot of stuff, so you need a place to put that. So we open the standard power tailgate, as I just mentioned before, and you open up to a rather sizable area here in the back. Now, excuse the jumper cables. Those are not for this car. That was for an entirely different reason. I don't want anybody getting any funny ideas that this press car suddenly died on me here in the middle of my filming. But anyways, here in the back, as you can see, we do have quite a large space. You have quite a sizable opening from the top to the bottom, and the floor sits at just enough of a height that doesn't take too much effort to heft all of your stuff into the back. Numbers wise, again, it's right up there with the competition. You're looking at 28.5 cubic feet of space to start, but you do have a couple of little party tricks. You have some under tray storage here underneath the back of the trunk floor, and then you also have 60/40 split fold rear seats, which you can fold down just at the pull of a tab here. As you can see, you pull that, the seat automatically flops forward, and with both of those seats folded down completely, that suddenly extends to just under 59 cubic feet of space. So again, keeping it in line with the competition. I know there are some out there that offer a good bit more space than this car, but then again, for what it is and the size of the vehicle itself, I would say that the cargo space is more than adequate should you have a few passengers who have to put their stuff in the back. Now, of course, with this A-Spec model being the sportiest out of the 4 trims for the RDX you can get for 2019, of course, you're not only going to get all the luxury features you would expect from an Acura, but you also get some with a bit more of a sporty flavor to them. Case in point are the seats, these bright red Milano perforated leather upholstered seats with the perforated suede here going up the middle. They are heated and ventilated with a built-in automatic setting here for both of the front occupants. But again, like I said, you have features up here in the front for days. For starters, in front of the driver, you have a 3-spoke, partially perforated leather wrap steering wheel with the grip extensions up here at the top, the perforations covering 9 and 3, and then you do have a bit more extra padding down here in the lower parts, just in case maybe you hit your knee down here. You have the large silver paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel that coincides with the sequential sport shift manual mode that you get with this RDX's 10-speed automatic transmission. And of course, festooning the top 2 spokes, you have all the electronic creature comforts you could possibly want. Over here on the left, you have some of your hands-free radio controls, including the seek track function built into this little click wheel here, your volume, the ability to turn the radio on and off. You have your voice recognition, as well as going through the Acura Connect apps as well. And then over here on the right, you have the majority of the functions for some of your active safety features as well. You have the road departure mitigation, which is basically the steering function that coincides with the lane keeping assist system, as well as functions for the adaptive cruise control that I mentioned earlier. If you look to the left of the wheel itself, you have the manual tilting and telescoping function. That's just this little lever here to the lower left on the column itself. And then if you come even further left, you have this little cluster of buttons that are pretty easily understandable. You have the lane departure warning, your active parking assist, the forward collision warning and traction control. You have the active brake hold system. We've covered that in multiple vehicles before. Just keep your foot on the brake with the system active. When you come to a stop, just hold your foot on the brake for a second or two. The system activates. You can take your foot off the brake pedal and it will hold the car in place. Now, moving into the center of this RDX's interior, the first thing that comes into view is the 10.2-inch high-definition display that is fixed here into the top of the dash. Now, connected to the infotainment is Acura's True Touch interface, which I basically think, again, they ripped right out of a Lexus product. But one thing that I'm liking is the fact that when you touch the pad, for starters, the response is instantaneous. You don't have to put a whole lot of pressure on this pad in order to select something, but also there are no vibrations or anything coming through the little touchpad itself. And again, it just is a much smoother system to operate compared to some of its competition. As you can see by some of the icons up here, we have things like Apple CarPlay on board. We do not have Android Auto in this vehicle, so if you're an Android user, unfortunately you're SOL with that one. You do have the standard GPS navigation, which the graphics aren't bad. They're pretty rudimentary for a GPS system, but then again, most people these days are using things like Google Maps or Waze, which to me are a little bit more reliable than a GPS system like this, but for a luxury SUV, it does the trick just fine. You also do have the rear view camera, so we'll go ahead and put the car in reverse here real quick. The guidance lines here are trajectory based, so they will turn when you turn the steering wheel. And as you can see, you also do have multiple views for the rear view camera as well. You can go from, say, like a top-down perspective. You do also have the ability to turn on or off the rear cross traffic alert, as you can see by this icon here. But me personally, I prefer the widescreen look for the camera. As you can see, it takes a little bit of time to load when you come over here, but there you go. So I like the widescreen mode myself because it actually does allow you to see quite a lot of things. Now, within the infotainment system, you guys know that I always love the part when we get to test the audio system, and I'm absolutely thrilled with the stereo system in this car. And thrilled, frankly, is an understatement, because in this Acura, we have a 16 speaker, you did just hear me right, 16 speaker ELS 3D Studio surround sound audio system. And the speakers in this car are just about everywhere. You have one up here behind the navigation display. You have two in each of the A pillars. There's four in each of the doors. So one here and one down at the bottom. There are four mounted in the roofs, and the sound quality this creates is insane. So one push of this little audio button and you'll see what I mean when I say that this truly is one of the best audio systems that I've heard in some time. So now, after playing around with that infotainment system for a second, I have worked up quite the sweat. So that means let's move on to the dual zone automated climate control system in here, which again, just like all the other SUVs we tested before, all the functions are exactly the same. You have your temperature controls either side, the button to turn the system on or off, your climate modes over here on the left, followed by the AC button, the fan speeds in the middle, you have your recycling button over here on the right, along with your front and rear defrost, and the heated exterior mirrors to go along with it on the right hand side as well. You also have the button for the automatic function, as well as the button to synchronize this car's temperatures as well, so you can operate them independent of each other, or you can operate them both at the same time. Below that, we have the functions for the 3-stage heated and ventilated seats. These are just for the front occupants only. Unfortunately, in this A-Spec model, we do not have heated rear seats. As you move below that, however, you get to this very strange set of controls down here in the middle. Now, this large silver knob, basically taken straight out of the Acura NSX, controls the integrated dynamic system, which is basically Acura's fancy speak for the drive mode select. Now, you have 4 different modes in here, but you have snow mode, so you twist it to the left, and that's how you start to go up the list. So you have snow mode, you have comfort mode, you have sport, and finally, Sport Plus, the most aggressive of the settings, where it tightens the steering wheel, the steering itself rather, completely. The throttle response is a lot sharper. The gear changes are a lot quicker. But for me, I've enjoyed driving this car just primarily in comfort mode, just to provide a little bit more of a luxury atmosphere, in addition to all the sporty stuff in here. If you move below that, you have a row of 4 different buttons, and these control, again, the 10-speed automatic transmission in here. So you have park, reverse is a little trigger down here, so you keep your foot on the brake, you pull down on that, that puts the car in reverse. Then you have neutral, and then you have the drive button, which also houses the sport button as well. So I'll put it in drive for a second, and then if you push it again, you look up here in the gauge cluster, not sure if you can see that, but at the bottom you now have a little S, so that means that the car is now in sport mode as well. It also means it activates the parking sensors, so they annoy the hell out of you at the same time. So with all of these buttons in place up here on the center stack, you're probably wondering, how do I charge my phone, or how do I plug in my auxiliary to listen to my music, should your phone have such a capability? Well, Acura has thought of that, because they have put all those controls down here in this little hidden compartment. You have each of these little flaps here, at least the one on the left. Your USB is over here on the right, but you have your auxiliary input and one 12-volt 120-watt outlet right here on the far left. But if you come up here, you have one additional little USB hidden here in the middle of the center console, next to 2 rather sizable cup holders. Now, these are not removable like some luxury crossovers, which allow you to, say, take these out and have a little space underneath. Unfortunately, they are fixed in place, so those are not going anywhere. You have a little slider that allows you to cover that up, so you can put things maybe on top of those at the same time. And hidden here in the back, you have a nice little leather-bound center console with a little bit more of some additional space here at the back. Now, of course, last but not least, I just have to show you guys just not only how big the panoramic sunroof is on this vehicle, but also how it works. So over here on the right, you have a trigger that pulls back the shade. And one thing that's interesting is in some cases, it'll go back only a certain distance and then it'll stop. But then in this case, if you push it all the way back and hold it down for a bit, the shade goes all the way to the far back as far as it can possibly go. Then you flick this trigger and now you notice that the sunroof stopped, not all the way back. If you push the trigger again, now suddenly you have a million miles of headroom above you thanks to the fact that the sunroof has opened as wide as it has. So just like many other crossovers on the market these days, the RDX offers plentiful amount of space for not only its front occupants, but also the people sitting here in the back. Now I'm 6'1", and first off, I have plenty of headroom thanks to the fact that we have this panoramic sunroof in place right here, but also crucially, with this being the smaller of the Acura SUVs, at least their mainstream ones, with the MDX sitting a little bit higher, I still have plentiful amounts of room down here by my knees. This is the seat where I would have it as I'm driving the vehicle. And as you can see, thanks to the fact that not only the back of the seat is curved, but also that the rear seat is just so wide, there is plentiful amounts of room here for my knees as well. As far as the seats themselves, I do have a small little flip down center console here in the middle. The seats are 60/40 split fold. The triggers are up here on the upper portions of the seats, and they do fold completely flat. And other than that, it just feels like a very comfortable place to be here in the back of the RDX. All right, so now that you've seen all the racy bits of this A-Spec RDX, now comes the fun part. We get to see what precision crafted performance feels like as a crossover. So, in typical form, seatbelt on, engine start. Alrighty, so we are on the road now in the new Acura RDX A-Spec. So, what does this highly strung, higher performing version feel like to drive? Well, for starters, it's definitely quick, and I'm not going to make any joke about it. Having driven all 3 generations of the RDX at this point, I have to say that this 2019 model feels like it harks back more to the first generation, with a 2-liter turbocharged and direct injected 4-cylinder engine up front, now making 272 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, put through Acura's new 10-speed automatic transmission and their super handling all-wheel drive. Now, over our week of testing, we've put almost 700 miles on this car just in a week. So we've been enjoying this thing like crazy. And over the course, we've been averaging anywhere between 21 to 23 miles per gallon in mostly city driving conditions, which is actually about the same average that I get out of my 2010 Toyota RAV4. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I would have to say that this car definitely speaks for itself when it comes to one thing, and that is what happens when you put your foot down. So I'm just gonna put this car in sport mode here, turn the dynamic mode adjuster over to Sport Plus, and let's see what happens. Now, with only 4 cylinders and again about 280 horsepower on tap, it's not exactly the fastest engine that I've ever felt in an SUV. However, at the same time, this RDX is no slouch. I think the 0 to 60 times are something like 6.5 seconds or somewhere thereabouts. And for an SUV, you just don't find that nowadays. And as I said before, the A-Spec is something like Lexus's F-Sport division. It's not just stuff bolted onto the outside and, you know, a crazy looking interior like this. It has to have the right combination of luxury, comfort, and performance all rolled into one, and this RDX checks all of those boxes. So knowing that Acura is not just about performance, how comfortable is this RDX? Well, even though this is the A-Spec model, these beautiful leather-lined bucket seats are super comfortable. They're 12-way power adjustable for the driver's side and pretty much the same way over on the passenger side as well. I've got 2-person memory down here, here on the door rather, excuse me. And I can tailor this seat just about any way that I want. I've got plenty of wiggle room up here around my torsos, but it does hug me in the right way. Again, I do have a bit of a wider torso, even though I may look as skinny as a rail. And so I do have a good bit of maneuverability up here on the top part, and also I have plenty of thigh support down here as well. And couple that with with the fact that both of these front seats are also heated and ventilated at the same time. So now comes one of the bigger questions. Is this car worth over $46,000 as tested here? Well, on one hand, I have been nothing short of impressed with this car. Most people have been saying, from what I hear just by word of mouth, that this car somehow falls behind the competition like the Lexus NX and other competitors like that. But really, I think they're thinking more along the lines of the normal RDX. And while that car is a terrific vehicle in and of itself, being more of the enthusiast that I am, I really have enjoyed the A-Spec model because, again, it combines the right amenities, such as, again, the leather and everything else, but it combines that performance aspect that you just don't find from a lot of SUVs in this category. Well, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this review of the 2019 Acura RDX A-Spec, and if you guys have, please do give this video a thumbs up, and also be sure to click that subscribe button down below for many more videos like this and more to come in the future. But in the end, a huge thanks goes out to Acura once again for delivering us this absolute blast of a crossover to have for an entire week. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will see y'all next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.